Hello, everyone. Good to see you again for Chapter 2. This week, I'm using the book's PowerPoint. So sometimes I will go through and make my own PowerPoint based on the things I think you need to know, and then sometimes I will use the book's PowerPoint because I think that it is great and doesn't really need much improvement. So that's what's happening this week. So let me go ahead and share. And we'll start from the beginning. Okay. So Chapter 2, the counselor is a person and as a professional. So counselors get into this profession for a variety of reasons. I think what I admire most about the counselors that I know is that you get involved because you want to help people. There's a deep desire or calling or need for you as a person to help other people, and that's amazing. And the way that you know that you can do that is by listening, by being in a relationship with someone, and by helping them through a difficult time. So that being said, there are needs that are met for us in this profession as well. So we need to be aware of the influence of our own personality and needs, and how sometimes we all have needs. That's an okay thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's a reason we go into this profession, and it's partially because the profession meets our needs. And again, nothing wrong with that. The problem comes in when we start leaning on the profession to meet our needs that aren't being met in our regular life, because then we become over-dependent on the clients we're serving and the role that counseling plays in our life. So some of the personal needs that counselors have that could be based on unresolved personal conflicts are a need to tell people what to do, a strong desire to relieve all pain from clients, and a need to have all answers and be perfect, and an intense need to be recognized and appreciated. So obviously, the need to tell people what to do, I think largely is connected to a need for control. And sometimes when we feel a lack of control in our lives, we can project that onto other people by feeling important by telling other people what to do, or feeling important because we feel like we have all the answers. And then there's the strong desire to relieve all pain from clients. So this may start and come from a very good place, again, from wanting to help other people. But we don't have the ability to remove pain from clients. We only have the ability to support people through their struggle. And that can be a really hard thing to come to terms with when we're starting off in the profession. A need to have all answers and be perfect. So sometimes people who come from abusive backgrounds or backgrounds in which their needs were not met as children, or even as in their current situation as adults, feel that they have to be perfect because there might have been consequences for not being perfect previously. And so, having all the answers and being perfect is not going to be the answer here. Being genuine and authentic and real and sitting with someone through their pain is what we're really after. And then there's an intense need to be recognized and appreciated. And so again, if you're not getting your needs met in your personal life, if you're not being recognized and appreciated by maybe a partner or friends or family, then it's possible that you might look to the profession to get that need met. And that's not really appropriate because, again, we can get over-dependent, or we can, start to have countertransference in our relationships with clients, and that's not going to be a healthy relationship for ourselves or for the client we're attempting to serve. So a good antidote to these things is to get personal counseling. There is nothing wrong with it. If we are preaching that counseling and therapy is a good thing, then why would we shy away from it, right? I think it's beneficial to both trainees and experienced practitioners. I know personally, I'll tell you, I've definitely been to a lot of counseling, and I still go off and on as needed, and I think it's a wonderful thing. And it helps me kind of sort through where I am in life and manage my own feelings so that they don't become a burden to maybe the clients I'm serving or others in my life in ways that are unhealthy. So It's a positive thing, and it helps us in a variety of ways. And it's a necessary form of ongoing self-care, because you may listen to and hear a lot of really challenging, hard things in your relationship with others as a counselor. And sorting through that can be problematic at times. So there's nothing wrong with just getting a little self-care, letting it off your chest, and working through some of those issues in personal counseling. So reasons for participating would be to explore your values and motivations for becoming a helper, and how your needs influence your actions, and how to use power in your life. So again, there's nothing wrong with having needs. It's just when we're, when we have an extreme reaction to clients, or when we're trying to get our needs overly met in the counseling relationship, that it can become a problem. So if you can explore your values and motivations in counseling, in personal counseling, then you'll know how to bracket those needs and use power and influence in a way that's not detrimental to your clients. You'll have an awareness of it. It's also to identify and explore your blind spots and potential areas of countertransference, and for remediation purposes. So let's talk about transference and countertransference, because that's been mentioned a couple times now, or countertransference has anyway. So transference is the process whereby clients project onto their therapist past feeling and attitudes they had towards significant people in their lives. So for instance, if they had an overbearing, judgmental mother, maybe they perceive you as judging or trying to control or being overbearing. And that would be, them projecting their feelings onto you, and not necessarily be based in reality. If you know that they come from a background like that, you can identify the transference. So that's something that is common and does happen in relationships, or in counseling relationships. So it's something to be aware of. And it's also defined as the unreal relationship in therapy. So counselors need to be aware of their personal reaction to a client's transference. All reactions of clients to a therapist are not to be considered as transference, and dealing appropriately with transference is an ethical issue. So it can be really tricky to know when transference is happening. You would obviously need to know a lot about the client to be able to make that determination. And you want to be careful to not label everything as transference. Maybe they are having a genuine reaction to something you said that was judgmental, and maybe you don't want to see it. So we need to be self-aware, but then also be aware that this can happen in the relationship. Countertransference. So countertransference is the therapist's total emotional response to a client, including feelings, associations, fantasies, and fleeting images. And this is when the opposite of transference happens. So maybe the clinician is working with a client, and they start to feel like they've experienced this type of relationship before. So they may have feelings that they're projecting onto the client. So it can occur when maybe you feel extra judgmental of someone, or you're feeling really angry toward a client because they're having an affair and you've been cheated on before, or someone is having a drug problem and you have had drug problems in your family life before, so you become extra sensitive to it and you start making decisions based on your emotional response instead of an objective view of what the client's actually going through. That's countertransference. And so that can happen when we demonstrate inappropriate affect, respond in highly defensive ways, or lose objectivity because our own conflicts are triggered. So this is another good reason to go to counseling, because if you don't know what your blind spots are, or your emotional soft spots, I should say, then you won't know when you're triggered. And we need to know when we're triggered, because then we can recognize countertransference in ourselves, and it's not such a scary thing or a detrimental thing in the relationship. So if we notice when we are triggered and we're countertransferring, we can stop ourselves, bracket those emotional responses, and stop ourselves from engaging in the relationship in a way that would be unhealthy or harmful to the client. So countertransference is not always a bad thing. It can be constructive or a destructive element in the therapeutic relationship. I'm a big believer in, if you've worked through your problems, it can become your greatest strength as a clinician because you have an intimate understanding of what the person may be going through. That being said, every person is different. We will never truly understand what another person's going through, but we can maybe more deeply empathize. And so as long as we've worked through our emotional triggers, we might have an insight that someone else doesn't have that could truly help the client work through whatever it is they're going through. So as long as we're aware of countertransference, it's not the worst thing in the world. And examples could be, and I've mentioned a couple things, being overprotective with a client, not maybe being biased and not wanting to see how they may be contributing to their own problems, treating clients in benign ways, rejecting a client, or needing constant reinforcement and approval. So if you're having some strong feelings about the client or in response to the client issues, they might be triggering something in you that you want to be aware of. So examples of countertransference include seeing yourself in clients, developing sexual or romantic feelings for a client, giving advice compulsively, or desiring a social relationship. So if you're starting to feel super close to them, or you can really, really relate, or you're getting too close, having some attraction, that might be an indication that some boundaries have been crossed and you want to be careful. We want to be careful about client dependence. So in the counseling relationship, you're sharing so many intimate things that maybe you wouldn't share in any other type of relationship. And so in that way, a little bit of dependence is not a terrible thing, but at the end of the day, we want to prepare our clients to go out into the world and develop the skills to be successful in their relationships without us, because it is a professional relationship and we're not going to be in their lives forever. The issue occurs when counselors promote dependence or encourage dependence. And, this can happen really overtly if we start giving advice or making decisions for our clients or trying to influence their decision-making process. And it can manifest in some more subtle ways as well, by colluding with clients and keeping them dependent. Maybe you really aren't quite ready to take that step. Or termination can be delayed even though client no longer needs services. So if you don't want to terminate with the client, even though they're ready to terminate, you really need to ask yourself why. Is this because I really care about the person and I don't want to lose them, or I'm dependent on this client on some level? So you really need to just ask yourself those things. Another thing we need to be aware of as counselors is that it's a very stressful profession. You are dealing with some of the toughest things that you'll ever hear in your life because people will share them with you and they maybe can't share them with other people. So you're going to hear the horror stories. You have to be prepared for that. And that can really lead to empathy fatigue, burnout, and your own stress and taking on that burden, because when we empathize, we're giving a piece of ourselves. And so you are going to feel the pain and stress of the clients that you serve. So some sources of stress for counselors include feeling like they're not helping their clients, a tendency to accept full responsibility for client progress, feeling pressure to quickly solve problems, and having high personal goals and perfectionistic striving. So we need to understand as counselors that it's not our job to fix people. We are not fixers. We are there to listen. We are there to help facilitate healing and growth. But ultimately, it's not, we don't have the ability to heal all wounds or change people's behaviors. So they have to choose to change their behaviors, and some hurts may never heal. And that's something that we have to understand, and that it's okay. Sometimes just being there means more than attempting to fix or seeing progress in traditional ways that we might want to see them. And then counselor burnout and impairment. So burnout is a state of physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual depletion characterized by feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. This is what I'm talking about when I say that, it's a tough profession. And if you're in a high stress job where you're seeing lots of clients in a day, you may be more prone to this. Also, if you're experiencing stressors in your life that contribute to your own pain, then this can be even harder to deal with the pain of other people. You can also get to this state if you feel like people aren't moving forward and you would like for them to. Impairment speaks a little more to when things are going on in your personal life that can impact the counseling process or relationship. So let's say you have a chronic illness or severe psychological depletion that's likely to prevent a professional from delivering effective services. So if you are going through something that is really intense, or you start to develop a mental illness or a substance abuse problem, or you're going through a major life crisis, you might become an impaired professional. And if you start to feel this way, the ethical thing to do is to obviously get some counseling, talk to your supervisor, but maybe even take a break. There's nothing wrong with taking a break if you absolutely have to. And this can result in consistently functioning below acceptable practice standards. So if you're starting to neglect your notes or neglect, giving informed consent, or the boundaries are just gone, that could be an indication of impairment. So signs of therapist decay that can lead to burnout are an absence of boundaries with clients, excessive preoccupation with money and being successful, taking on clients that exceed one's level of professional competence, and poor health habits in the areas of nutrition and exercise. So if you're generally not taking care of yourself, if the focus becomes on other things like making money, and you're losing your boundaries of clients, this is a good sign you're headed to burnout. If you're living in isolated ways or not getting your needs met personally and professionally, if you're failing to recognize the personal impact of clients' struggles, if you're not noticing how their struggles are impacting you, that could be a sign. And then if you're resistant to personal therapy when you're experiencing your own distress. So ways to maintaining vitality as a counselor. Sometimes we're not prepared to sustain sustaining your personal self is an ethical obligation. And, you're often thrown into these jobs and you're not really sure how it's going to impact you. And so maintaining health overall is going to be the best way to maintain your vitality as a counselor. And that requires a lot of self-care, having boundaries between work and home, having a positive relationship with friends and family, finding healthy relationships and interests and hobbies that serve you can be helpful in this way. Okay, so that's all I have for you for chapter 2. So I hope that you learned a couple of things, and we're going to be talking about these issues in classes as well. So if you join us for the optional classes, we can really have some discussions and break down some of these issues on a deeper level. But I hope you have a great day, and in the name of self-care, take care of yourself today and find something that gives you joy and pleasure. All right, have a good day.